Hi, everyone. I wanted to take some time today to talk to you about merging labels, which I know you did in Chapter 8 in your Word book, which was due this past week before we began the final project. But there's a little portion of the final project that I added that really wasn't covered in the book. So I just want to make sure that you could find your way through creating labels with an external, like with an Excel file instead of an Access file like you were using before. So if we're on our Mailings tab here, just one note I wanted to make if you didn't really note the difference. If you remember in Chapter 6, we were working with the envelopes and labels right here. Over on the left, we were not doing the merge to begin with. And in this case, the reason why you might use these two over doing a merge is if you just have one or two that you need to do. Or in, like you saw in the chapter with envelopes, you're adding it to a letter or something. So that's where using these when they're kind of standalone options. Mail merge obviously is going to be more for merging when you have multiple labels or letters or envelopes that you're wanting to print. So what I want to show you this week is how you can use an Excel file to merge your labels. So obviously, like we've learned before, we're going to start our mail merge by going Start Mail Merge and choosing Labels. And for the final project, I don't have it specific on there, but go ahead and just use a typical address label. So your Avery US letter 5160, 62, whatever you pick is fine. As long as it's a true address label. Click OK. And one other thing I just want to mention as well, I have it set that my grid lines turn on. I like to see the grid lines when I'm doing labels. So just a reminder that you can turn those on and off from the Table Tools Layout button there, View Grid Lines, which sometimes is how it comes up and it's hard to really see what's happening. Or that it just works as a toggle switch, turning it on and off. So I like to have mine on. That's why I'm seeing this on my screen right now. I'm going to go to the Mailings tab again. And last week, as you were working through this chapter, you often went to type a new list. And they would have you pick the different, you could customize your columns. You could either type right in here. Boy, this is small. Let's make that a little bigger. Or you could customize your columns and you could choose what fields you wanted to. You could add fields, delete fields, and so on. When you do this and you add those fields in there and you finish in the end, if you remember, it had you save the information. If you didn't realize that it's having you save it as an Access file. It doesn't really come up that way. You wouldn't know it if you didn't see that file saved somewhere else. But just so you know, that's what's happening when you're creating that list in Word. Most people probably do not create a list in Word. You have a list already, and now you're bringing it into Word to merge it. So what I wanted to show you today, I'm going to hit cancel here because we're not going to type a new list. We're going to go to select recipients, use an existing list. And for the final project, this is what you're going to have to do for the labels. For the letter, I have you still typing up a new list, but for the labels, I want you to use, you're going to use this committee address list. I've included that in the in Blackboard for you, but I'm just going to use this Excel file I have here to show you how this is going to work. So I'm going to choose Open, and it's always going to ask you to select a table within, which is really a sheet within Excel. So I'm just going to pick the first sheet here. That's where the information's on. I know that because I know the Excel file. If you don't know that, you can always look at the Excel file. But more than likely, it's just on the first sheet. Click OK. And just as we know with labels, it's going to put this next record information on here. I'm just going to go into the Edit Recipient list so you can see the records that I just brought in here from this Excel file that I had. And also just a couple of things when you're in here, you can always, if you have better information than I have in here, let's say we had multiple cities here, I could choose to only print certain cities if I had a list of 20 people and I only wanted the people from New York and I had a bunch of people from other cities. I could just choose New York here. It'd filter my list for me. I can also deselect everything and only select certain people to print. So you can do all of this within the Edit Recipient List option. But in this case, we want to print everybody, so I'm going to keep it all selected and click OK. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, and maybe you kind of realize this, the one thing that I always encourage people to do when you're working through mail merge is to work from the left side of your ribbon here all the way to the right side, and that helps you complete. So you have to start with telling it what you want to do. Then you have to tell it, well, what recipients do you want to use? And then from there, you go ahead and start putting in your fields. So in this case, again, it's a label. So we're going to choose our address block here. Everything is set up fine for me. This looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. The biggest thing that people often forget with doing labels is this Update Labels button. Once I put something here, I have to tell it to update the labels so that it puts it on every label. Otherwise, all you're going to get is one, and you're not going to get all your labels to fill out. So biggest missed step is this update labels. I'm going to go ahead and hit preview results, and I can see how my labels are appearing here. What I like to do then is go ahead, and they had you do this in the book, but I want to fix these labels. Labels are typically not going to be 1.15 spacing here and having the before paragraph spacing. So I'm going to go to my layout tab here, and I'm going to choose before paragraph and make that 0 so we don't have any extra spacing in there. I'm also going to change my left indent here a little bit. It's nice to have that indented so it's not so close to the edge, because sometimes it prints right on the edge, and it, number one, looks funny, and secondly, it can cut it off a little bit. So you can indent that 0.2, 0.3 to push that over, as long as you don't have anything too long there that might push it over onto the right side. The last thing I like to do then is under the layout tab, I like to choose this second option here as far as alignment. Align center left means that it's going to give us that little bit of space at the top too. So now we don't have the chance of having it cut off at the top of our labels either. A lot easier to do once you go through and actually have all your labels out there. You can select it all and get it all done at one time. So I just wanted to mention that. I know the book went through some of that as well, but just a good reminder. Finally, with the mailings, the last step, that remember, this is just our preview results. We haven't actually merged it at this point. So I like to have this original file kind of kept like this so that I can see and know that this is my, what we call our main document that has the actual fields in it. And then I'll go ahead and do the finish and merge to a new document showing all my labels there. And then I'd be able to print that and send it to the printer to print the labels. One thing I always like to recommend is typically you might have a reason to keep this file because it would be your main document. Like we could just call it labels main document. And then anytime you have to print labels, you can open it up, select your recipients and go ahead and merge. Most of the time, you really don't have a reason to keep merged files because you can easily merge it again. So typically, other than for our purposes of our assignments, I would close that up and I wouldn't save it. I'd print it, close it, don't save it. And then I would just keep this main document here to be able to use again and again. So I wanted to, again, the whole point of me showing you this almost 8 minutes later is to tell you about using an Excel file in as your recipient list. Very easy to use. Okay, the last thing I just wanted to mention is I do have everything updated in Blackboard here for your final project. I think I have everything in there, but of course you guys know that I tend to forget things or miss things along the way. As I asked earlier on to please forgive my messing up oftentimes this semester in these online classes. It's easy to miss things as you're going along. So I apologize for that, and thank you for those of you who always let me know that I haven't put the Dropbox in or I missed a file or something. So thanks for your patience on that. The last thing on the final project here, then, if you haven't looked at it, you have this part 1, which you're using your workbook to grab assessments from for that. And then you have part 2, which I've included the download for this here. This is the actual project here. Blackboard was acting really weird when I tried to put a link in here, so I just put it down here. So here's the actual final project. You'll see that it's typing letters and a memo. So here's your first letter. You're going to use these 3 people information. You'll type that into Word. This will be your recipient list. You'd have to create a new list. And just keep in mind that you're going to have probably a company name you're going to have in there, and you have to create an agent name field that you see here. And then notice the agent name field will also appear in your letter itself. So you'll have to do, so in this particular case for document 1, you are creating that recipient list in Word for these 3 people. In document 2, you're going to do what I just showed you how to do. You're going to create that labels from this Excel file, committee address list, which I have listed in Blackboard for you. Document 3, you're typing a memo. In document 4, you're going to be doing a writing activity from your workbook. I know you all are going to love this, but in this particular case, it gives you some information, but you have to come up with the actual wording of a letter. So this one will be a little tougher just because you have to come up with your own letter there, but putting it all in the proper format and such is what you'll do for this last one here. I think that's it. The last thing I wanted to mention, I'm going to reach out to some of you who have not registered for MBA 1. Yeah, document formatting is the first class that we encourage all students to take as they begin the program, because you're going to be using all these formatting things as you go throughout the program. MBA 2 is, or I'm sorry, MBA 1 is pretty much a continuation of document formatting, in that you use the same book. We're going to continue on in the book. We're going to do the level 2 part of the book in MBA 1. And then the only thing you'll have to purchase for next semester then is the workbook for MBA 1. So if you have not registered for that, I want to encourage you to do that, because starting next year, our curriculum is changing a lot. In MBA 1, the way it is right now will not be offered again. Because we're going to split up the software. Document formatting is going to be its own class. Then we're going to have a Word level 1 and a Word level 2. So everything's going to be a little bit different next year. So if you have not currently registered for MBA 1, I want to encourage you to do it so you can just keep going and you don't have this little blip or kind of change in your curriculum as you move along. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to be also creating a video to send out to everybody who's in the program online to just speak to some of these changes that we're making in the program, and just to help you maybe have a better idea of where you're going in the program. You know, another thing that we kind of take for granted, we can talk to our in-person people about that. And Mary and I were talking about how we need to get that information across to our online people as well. So I'll be getting you some of that information here in the near future. But as always, reach out to me if you have any questions. Good luck on your final project, and take care. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.